Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of How's That Day? It's a culture rundown with Tom and Phil. I'm Phil Wiedenheft, and I am here to introduce you to my co-host, Mr. Thomas Bond. Each week, Tom and I get together to chat about how our days have been going, and together we work through our thoughts on what's going on in pop culture. This week, I'll start with the same question I ask every week. Tom, how's that day?
Hey Phil, day's okay. We are in quarantine day. Um, we got to be close to day 60 by now, right?
I haven't even looked, to be honest.
I think I consider the day that the NBA canceled their season that night, which was the same night Tom Hanks announced that him and Rita Wilson had the corona. To me, that was kind of day one. Although the LA stay at home happened a few days later. I think that was the 16th, and the NBA canceling its season was the 11th or the 12th. So we're right around the 60-day mark.
Yeah, I don't even know if that feels correct or like time is completely erased from me right now. So it's like, is 60 days a long time ago? It feels like forever ago, but also it's like, oh man, yeah, wasn't that long ago. Maybe this just started.
I mean, that's if you're a public school kid, that's pretty much the length of a summer vacation. Maybe a little short on the short
Yeah, I
end,
think they
but
go a little bit longer. Bell's summer
like
vacation.
two and a half months
Yeah,
maybe.
Bell's summer vacation, I believe, starts this week. Might even be today. I should check.
Well, I remember in school when I was in school, um, the public school in my town got out in early mid June, and they came back like end of August. So I guess 2.5 months. So we're like 2 weeks away from a summer vacation's worth of quarantine.
Except it's like the worst summer vacation of all time.
Yeah, it sucks. Other than that, my day's okay. I guess I don't know. It's the same old shit all the time,
You reading?
all the fucking time. I am reading. Oh, yeah, I wanted to start recommending each episode the books that I'm reading, especially during quarantine, because I feel like my reading is accelerated a little bit. I just finished Portnoy's Complaint by
I've re-
Philip Roth. I don't know if
I
you
read
ever
that
read
like
that
a
one.
year and a half or 2 years ago. Yeah,
Oh man, that book is hilarious and angry and so
it's very
messed up.
messed up.
It
Yeah, I
is
loved it.
it is a delight. I mean, he basically he created this stereotypical like uh very intellectual, heady, overanalyzing, moralistic, self-deprecating, nebbish
Yeah,
Jew. Like
him and Woody Allen.
that's
Yeah,
Alex Portnoy. Yeah. Um and it's just so it's so NC-17. I was not expecting it to be that vulgar for a novel that was written in the early 60s.
I
I've read a few Philip Ross. This was probably like my fifth or sixth novel of his, but everything I'd read prior was later in his career, like the American Pastoral, Human Stain era. So I was not expecting it to be that funny and that vulgar at the same time. I really enjoyed it though. It was kind of like exactly what I
yeah.
needed right now. I needed something angry and
I got
funny.
into it when I was getting into Alex Ross Perry because Philip Roth was a big influence on Listen Up Philip, his film, and he was just talking. He
Yeah,
was
I can
talking
see
a
that.
lot about him in interviews, and I was like, yeah, I should go read some of those because, like you, I'd read American Pastoral and some of the bigger ones. But yeah, that cracked me up, and like you said, it's so vulgar. I could probably it's over on my shelf now. I'm in my bedroom, so I could probably literally go crack it open to almost any page and just find something filthy on it, and it's
So
like, and it's
filthy.
just like the darkest thoughts. And he kind of, I think, Shell, I've had discussions with her about it, and she's like, what's appealing about that? I'm like, he's kind of just tapping into like the darkest part of the male id, and he's just like running wild with it. And it's like a horror
Yeah.
show, but you're kind of drawn to it. And I think some men recognize the worst of themselves somewhere in there, and you're kind of like embarrassed that somebody else put it on a page to read.
Well, I also think there's just something there some artists are just able to get away with a lot more because their style is so enjoyable, and Philip Roth's style, the way he writes is so to me anyway, obviously this is my opinion, but it's so entertaining. He can hook me on any character, on any story. the closest he's ever come to losing me is reading The Human Stain, which I still enjoyed, but it got a little too into the self-pitying, like, oh, the PC establishment's coming after me main character, and it got a little... He lost the humor a little bit too much there for my liking, but for the most part, his language, the way he writes, is just so... It's purely enjoyable. So for that reason alone, it's worthwhile.
And it's also...
Even if you got nothing greater out of it. But it's so witty and smart, and there's a lot of thoughtfulness behind it. Even something like Portnoy, which is... Yeah, it's basically, for those who don't know, it's basically a confession, like a rant this guy is going on, presumably to his therapist. And Alex Portnoy is this Jewish guy growing up in New Jersey who's the smartest kid in class. He ends up taking a governmental position where he helps the disenfranchised, but he just lusts after women and sex, and he just wants to eat pussy. That's all he cares about doing. He's never been able to like settle down and have a wife and kids because he's too fucking horny. But like he knows his upbringing, his Jewishness, his own morality conflicts within him, where he knows he should feel bad about it, but he doesn't. But at the same time, he resents himself and his own behavior because it hasn't allowed him to settle down and have a quote-unquote normal family. But he loves eating pussy too much, so he just can't help it. And it's really great. It's just a really great, really funny film.
I watched, you've been reading, I've been watching this week. Speaking of like filthy bodily fluids and such, and it also relates to our conversation last week. I watched Capone, Josh Trank's film. And
oh boy.
I was very concerned for the first like 40 minutes because I was like really enjoying it, and I was like, oh no, am I gonna have to like eat a bunch of crow? But then the movie revealed itself to me. But on the fluids part, I almost like stopped it halfway through to like insist that you watch the movie because Tom Hardy's performance is disgusting. It's just it's so...
In the article that we read and argued over, there is a lot of mention about him like crapping his pants in scenes. Maybe more
there's
than one.
3 shit scenes in this movie, and and when I say every scene of him is him talking like through the bottom of his throat, and talking like that. He's chomping on a cigar the whole time, so he's just hawking loogies, and he's constantly throwing up. And it's basically about the last year of Capone's life, and as like this disease eats away at his brain, and it's kind of like this really, I guess, loosely abstract kind of like hazy memory as he tries to like piece together what's real and what's a memory. And as you watch this like icon go through these really pitiful kind of like disgusting final days of his life, which is what really happened to Capone. I'll be honest, I didn't really like know that or know the details, but it's not a very deep movie. I think the style I was kind of like really intrigued by for a good stretch at the very beginning, and kind of interested to see where it went. And the movie, I think, eventually reveals itself to be quite empty and not actually have much to say. But what I'm gonna not forget is the disgustingness of this performance. Like, it's kind of like something to behold. He's giving a Nick Cage level performance in terms of just being so over the top and just loud. And he's just like, yeah, I was watching the movie and he's just shitting everywhere, throwing up, pissing his pants constantly, like talks with a gargle in his throat through every line. It's a disgusting movie. But I mean, like,
the gargle sounds even more upsetting than all the shitting, to be honest. I can't stand that type of voice. Not even the, what's that? That kind of like intentional raspy lilt that some people have. What's the term for that?
I don't know. Frog throat. I don't know.
Like that guys use to like talk like this and sound a little sexier. Like not that necessarily, but the actual, it sounds like you have food stuck in your throat, which is that's the most disgusting sound.
The liver.
Yes. Okay, we got it.
That's his performance.
We got it. The anti ASMR. Yeah, I heard the reviews were bad. That's too bad. Where do we think about Tom Hardy's career
I just
than where
listened to
it's
a
gone.
I listened to a lengthy podcast about it today, so I've been thinking about it, especially in relation to this movie, because he's really like going for it these days, and he really goes big. And it's weird in that it's like I said, in terms of Capone, it's disgusting, and I feel like there is that element of like I'm never gonna forget it, but I don't know that it's actually a good performance. And
Right.
I
Well, you comparing him to kind of the insane side of Nicolas Cage's career kind of just jumped out to me as I remember around the time of Inception and Bronson kind of happening in a 1 or 2 year span, and being really blown away by the physical change he put on there.
yeah.
On top of just two great performances, I think in both of those movies, and then he's Ricky Tarr and Tinker Tailor. Like he had a really great. I feel like a lot of us thought he was going to be the next big,
Yeah.
not only A-list actor, but not just a celebrity A-list actor, like an awards-winning dominant.
Yeah, like
actor
we
or something
mentioned
like
Warrior a couple weeks ago. I think he's fantastic in that movie, and then he was cast as
that.
like after the Joker. We're like, holy shit, he's going to be the next, the Beck's Bat villain.
Yeah,
And then he comes
he
and
was
gives
Bane.
the
Yep.
craziest performance that like I don't think that movie is well remembered, but I think everyone will always be doing Bane impressions, for the rest of their lives. And like I said, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's kind of like Nick Cage and Mandy. It's like I don't know if it's a good performance. It's interesting, but I don't know.
Well, Nick Cage and Mandy, I think, is a good performance, and I also think as someone who, me personally, I went from uh, liking Dark Knight Rises when I saw it in theaters the first time to really not being a fan of it on a rewatch, and I've seen it again since then in chunks of it, and my opinion isn't that high on that movie overall. I'm not really a fan, but I wouldn't put any of the fault of that movie on Tom Hardy's shoulders necessarily.
Would you put it on Heinz Ward's?
Oh, that football scene.
It's not a good movie anyway.
It's brutal. So I'm looking up Tom Hardy's filmography. And where do we want to start with? He obviously had a small part in Star Trek Nemesis, but I think he was in Marie Antoinette from 2006. But I think we all his big breakout critically was Bronson, right?
Yeah, he had, like you said, he had that run of Bronson, Inception. He was doing, I think he popped up like in the Marie Antoinettes in like small character roles for a little while, but
He was Handsome Bob and Rock and Rolla. And that I remember is what blew me away. I saw Bronson in theaters, and then I think I rented Rock and Rolla on DVD or something, so I saw it after Bronson and Handsome Bob. It may have even been you pointing this out to me, not that we watched it together, but you saying, yeah, that dude's Bronson, and I just couldn't believe it. So that, as great as his role in Bronson is, that made it even greater in my estimation. So that's 2008. Bronson, I think, is released in 2009.
and then he starts his
Inception
like
comes-
mask period.
Yeah, so he has Inception in 2010, Tinker Tailor 2011, Lawless and Warrior, The Dark Knight Rises, Locke comes out in 2013, a very critically acclaimed movie. And then he's in The Drop, which is another like kind of good character, gangster crime type movie, but nothing amazing. Mad Max Fury Road in 2015, where he plays Max. Obviously one of the best films of the decade, but I don't think people are remembering it specifically because of his performance. He's of a piece there.
Which was actually one of my problems with it the first time I saw it. It was just one of those like, oh, Mad Max is not the star of this movie, and that just like really threw me the first time I saw it. But I'm actually watching that movie this week for the podcast, for the other podcast I listened to, so I'm excited to revisit that, especially since they just announced.
Oh yeah, that's one of its strengths, I believe, that he's not the lead.
Well, I mean, yeah, ultimately, I like that it's Charlize's movie, but I'm just saying that, yeah, the first time I saw it, I was like, why is Mad Max not a character in this movie? But yeah, Apparently George Miller just announced that they're doing a prequel now. It's been officially like greenlit, and it's going to be bigger than
The Wasteland.
and it's going to be bigger than Fury Road. So we'll fucking see what that means. But,
And I think that one will probably have Mad Max as the lead.
no, I think it's a Furiosa prequel. They just announced this like yesterday.
Oh well, I know Max is in it.
Oh, okay.
Which is that's interesting then, because they supposedly met for the first time during Fury Road, so I don't know how a prequel would involve them both unless it's simultaneous stories. Anyway, so yeah, after Mad Max, which is 2015, we then basically have The Revenant later that year, Dunkirk in 2017, a really, in my opinion, underrated comic book movie and a really great, fun Tom Hardy performance in Venom. I think that's really fun. And then he's in Peaky Blinders, which I've never seen, but he's in 11 episodes of that. And then we have Capone in 2020. And yeah, so he's really been under the radar since Mad Max. I mean, in terms of major movies in the past 5 years, The Revenant, which isn't a lead role, Dunkirk.
He got an Oscar nomination for The Revenant, at least.
As a supporting role.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still a big role.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so since Mad Max, The Revenant, which was also 2015, Dunkirk 2017, Venom, 11 episodes of Peaky Blinders, Capone. That's it.
What about Taboo? When was that?
Taboo, 2017 to 2020. There have been 9 episodes so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know he was doing that for a while. Yeah, so I don't know.
It's kind of crazy. He's kind of disappeared.
Yeah, he disappeared into shit and piss for his new role.
I guess so.
I mean, it's a not you. For those who listened to last week's episode, I'm trying, to be fair. Like I watched Josh Trank's movie, and I would say he says in that article that it feels more like his first movie, and I would agree there that it does feel like someone's first movie, where he has a lot of style. And maybe a couple cool ideas, but I ultimately, like I said, I don't think there's a lot of meat actually there, and there's not a lot of substance to it. If you actually like keep watching it, I think it kind of runs out of steam pretty quickly and starts to just kind of like feel like you're watching an old man just die, like, and just in the most disgusting way possible. And it's, it's just. Like I said, it was a little boring by the second half,
right.
But it's not like an unwatchable piece of shit. And I'm not, I wanted to try and give it a fair shake, especially, after kind of trying to, stab him in the back last week. So I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll watch his movie. And so yeah, I watched it. It's not the worst thing in the world. There's certainly memorable parts to it. If you're looking for one of those this week to watch, there's worse ways you could do it. I gave it 2.5 out of 5.
It is a 2020 film, so if you're trying to up your stats for your year-end list, because this is going to be a weird year-end list, year-end film for 2020. That's for damn sure. Well, that's cool that you watched it. I will also say a movie that is in post-production, so hopefully that won't delay the actual finishing of the film, the release, who knows, but the sequel to Venom, Let There Be Carnage, is supposedly in post-production.
Yes.
To go back to Tom Hardy. Directed by Andy Serkis.
Yeah, that's going to be weird.
I loved Venom, man. Did you ever see it?
Yeah. I watched it once it hit video. I did not see it in theaters, but I did catch up with it. It was funny.
She has no idea we're going to win her back.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, like, I'll have to admit, like, the dumbness of it, it clearly knew it was, like, having fun, which sort of, I think, let me kind of have a little bit more fun with it. I think if it was like trying to be super serious, then I would have been like, this sucks. But
no, the fact that it knows it's a dumb, silly movie is what makes it.
Yeah, so I'm very interested. Like I said, though, that's another moment where I'm like, I don't know that Tom Hardy's giving an actual good performance here. I think this is just strange, these decisions he's making, and I don't know. Obviously, his performance is of a masterful journalism. That's what I took away from it. Just the way he can just barge with his pen into an office and be like, "You owe me answers, sir." It's such a ridiculous movie. But anyway,
I like it too.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous movie. I'll watch Let Them Be Carnage in theaters if theaters are ever open again.
Well, as of right now, it has a release date of July 2021. So if theaters aren't open by then, let's all just fucking let's just kill ourselves.
All right, so let's kind of like take a soft step into our main topic today. It's we're going to talk about the show Neon Genesis Evangelion. How do you pronounce? Evangelion. That's what I thought when I heard them talking in the show. And I was like, I think that's how they're pronouncing it, but I don't know what the consensus was. But before we dive too hardcore into that, I wanted to know, Tom, what's your maybe not even limiting. I don't want to like get so broad into all of animation, but specifically, what's your reference points and what's your history with anime? Are you a longtime fan? Do you just know a couple things? Like, where are you coming at this from, and why?
Yeah.
What particular? And what struck you about this one that you were finally like, let's do that now?
Yeah, so I apologize, listeners, if I'm about to repeat what Phil said, but I kind of lost you for a second. So I suggested to Phil when we decided to start recording season 2 of this pod to maybe do some, fill in our blind spots of classic pop culture. And for some reason, this one came out of my brain first. Even though I know neither Phil nor myself are diehard anime fans. But this is just a series that I've known about for many, many years, since I was 15 years old or something like that. I like anime. I'm not a super fan by any means. I know kind of all the major crossover hits, like the anime stories that have become successful in America, the ones that have kind of stayed popular in Japan that my American anime friends have found out and researched. I don't really know those ones personally, but the ones I end up watching I really enjoy. So it started for me with Akira, the movie Akira, in high school. I think that was the first anime feature film that I watched. And then obviously getting into Miyazaki and all of his films. Big Miyazaki fan. I want to say my first one was...
Spirited Away. I mean, Princess Mononoke was like 97, 98. And
yeah, and it was Princess Mononoke was the first one I saw, because I rented the DVD of that from a local mom and pop store, and this was a year or two before Spirited Away was released. Because I remember when Spirited Away came out in 2002 or 2003, I was anticipating it. I was familiar with it and looking forward to it. So big fan of that filmmaker, big fan of the movie Akira. And then I had a group of friends in high school that anime was their thing. This was like, and these were very close friends of mine, especially early on in high school. They would just get together after school every day and watch Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, and they started playing the Pokemon video games, and those series I never really got into. So that is kind of where the demarcation point happened between me and anime and my anime friends. I was still a fan of certain stuff, and friends would introduce me or recommend certain other titles to me. Like I was a Cowboy Bebop fan in high school, a show that I still really enjoy watching to this day. I just bought the Blu-ray set actually a few months ago, and other series like FLCL, which is kind of this weird high school genre bending TV show. But anyway, Neon Genesis Evangelion is kind of the holy grail, at least as far as I understand it. This is the one series that every anime friend I have ever talked to, when they say, what anime do you like? And I don't mention this, they say, oh, so you haven't seen Neon. Or you haven't seen NGE is what they call it. And I always say, no, I know, I really want to get to it, but the DVD is out of print, you can't stream it, blah, blah, blah. And they all say that's the best one. It's the best one. There's a TV show you have to watch, and then a movie that came out right after. You have to see those of a piece. They redefined the genre, blah, blah, blah. It's the best ever. And finally, last year, Netflix bought the streaming rights. It is now available for anyone who is curious to stream on Netflix in the United States. That's how Phil and I are watching it. And I knew that it was streaming. That's why I recommended that me and Phil watch it. And that's what we are doing. And I'm excited we are doing it.
Cool. I'm okay. I think it's cool. Like you said,
I also like Godzilla, which is not anime per se, but follows a lot of the same tropes. And this show in particular reminds me a lot of the newer Godzilla movie, Shin Godzilla. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah, it's from the same director.
It is. He did Shin Godzilla?
Yeah. He is also the voice of the lead. He's also the lead voice in The Wind Rises, which is how I primarily know him, actually.
Oh, shit. Okay, well, that makes perfect sense. But sorry, I just wanted to put that in. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Oh, just, you had mentioned, like, hey, let's talk a little bit about, like, our relationship to anime. And my first thought was, like, well, I don't really have one. Like you said, I'm not really that big into it. But I guess as I was watching these episodes, I was kind of flashing back, and I was not so much to anime, but I realized that I'd had a pretty lengthy relationship with Asian culture of various kinds, and this type of the heavily influenced stuff that was this is being referenced to, or this was eventually referenced from, like, I grew up really liking shit like the Guyver, and I don't even know if you know what that is, but
I do not.
It's like, it's this, Mark Hamill is in it, and there's two of them, and then there was like an animated show. It was basically an R-rated, a big version of, or an R-rated version of, like, Power Rangers, where, like, this guy gets an alien suit that he can put onto him, and these blades come out of his elbows, and he, like, fights off other aliens that have landed on Earth. And so it was one of those, and there was stuff like Power Rangers and Voltron and these other kind of properties that kind of came over, and not to mention Jackie Chan movies and all these other kind of things. But like you said, anime never really cracked through like the way those did. And I think some of it was, I think what I perceived being an American used to Disney, I think it was the cheap animation style that probably initially threw me off, like thinking it looked like an episode of Speed Racer or whatever, just thinking it looked cheap or weird and not really. And especially, like you said, like it was subtitled on top of all that, which has never really been a problem for me, but it just seemed like one extra obstacle to overcome, And like, yeah, but as I was watching this, I kind of flashed back to a bunch of stuff that I used to watch as a kid. Like, I watched this anime, like R-rated version of Street Fighter. I don't know if you ever saw that. And all these other, like, crazy things.
It was actually called Street Fighter, or was it a Street Fighter knockoff property?
No, it was a Street Fighter movie. I can find the title, but yeah, there was like a Street Fighter, like, direct to video movie that had like like the usual thing, like boobs and yeah, Street Fighter 2 the animated movie is what it's called.
Is there a Street Fighter 1 the animated movie?
I don't believe. No, and it says it's PG-13, but all right, yeah, but it's like got tons of blood, and like, so when you see like blades going through people, it's like much hardcore than the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Right. And so when I was a kid, I was like, no, this is my Street Fighter movie. So even shit like that I hadn't really thought of in years, I was like, yeah, I guess I did have a relationship to some of this, and like you, I had seen several of the big Miyazaki titles growing up, but I hadn't really done a deep dive into them until last year. Now I have a box set with all of them because I just love them all so much, and I had a really amazing time making my way through them and kind of learning about them and their culture. But those are, very different than this type of stuff. This sort of more, I guess, violent. I mean, Mononoke is violent, but then you have something like this, which is much more, I would say, pop and action oriented, and I know that there's a lot of ideas going on, but it's not quite. I think this one has a little bit more surface fun to be had as well. But yeah, I was just that was what kind of came to my mind, was the cheap animation probably was what threw me off as a kid. There's like 3 and 4 cell animation, and this looks like 2 cell animation, and which is like the number of drawings per second, basically. Right. And
anime has a lot of that low cell count animation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like almost what looks like still frames on reaction shots of characters and stuff like that. Like their reactions are frozen in time. That's kind of what that effect gives off.
And that's to save money and time, and so they don't have to draw the mouth moving. They can just have somebody's hand behind their mouth and just have them talk, and not move. So it's just a still image.
Yeah, I'm curious what the production schedule is on a lot of anime, especially shows that were week to week. What I'm drawn to initially. So, Neon Genesis is 26 episodes. There's also a movie that takes place after the show, or that was made after the show. We watched the first half dozen. We were supposed to watch the first 7, which Phil did. I only watched 6 because I'm a moron. But what I'm really enjoying so far, you said, comparing something like what we've seen so far of this, which is about 2.5 hours worth of the show versus a Miyazaki film or something like that, and the violence kind of having that surface level entertainment, and maybe something like a Miyazaki being a little deeper. I agree and I don't agree. Like, as someone who has seen a lot of episodes, not unwillingly, but just by happenstance of hanging out with friends, of seeing a lot of episodes of Dragon Ball Z or something like that, right? Which is almost pure action.
Well, I don't mean...
Well, hold on. That's just what I was going to say is, a show like that, which is kind of just like pure action and fun. Neon Genesis... It's a serialized show, but there also we seem to be dealing with a lot of episodic content. Like each episode is a new big bad or a monster of the week sort of thing. There are a lot of those, and it's about defeating them. And so it's this kind of big kaiju type violence, like an Ultraman or a Godzilla episode of destruction between two giants battling among a city, and there's a bunch of war and destruction. So in terms of the action and violence, I think what you're saying is totally on point. What I'm enjoying about it more, though, is it seems like a really sad show. It just gives me a very, very sad vibe in an interesting way.
Well, hold on. Before you, I want to set up the show a little bit, because if someone is listening, they don't know anything about what the show's about. So let me just really quick. The story is centers around this kid named Shinji, who is he's suddenly grabbed, and he's recruited by this. In the first episode, he's grabbed and kind of thrown into this government agency's attempts to fight off what are called angels. They're called angels in the show, which are basically what he was saying, the kaiju, these giant creatures that have attacked at various times over past decades. We learned they've kind of come in different waves, and they're coming faster now at this new rate. And so they fight them off with these giant kind of skyscraper-sized fighting robots that are known as the Evangelions. They call them Evas in this show. And the pilots, as is often the case in these types of things, have to form a physical and psychological link with the machines in order to run them, which makes it dangerous for them to operate outside of just, like, say, operating a drone or something. So I watched the first 7 episodes.
By the way, a device that Guillermo del Toro completely ripped off in Pacific Rim.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Yeah.
This was not something I don't remember ever seeing until I saw Pacific Rim, which obviously came out 20 years later. I mean, it is like verbatim the exact same concept.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
And what happens is in the first 7 episodes, we see that Shinji has a fast connection, that like mental connection. He's much faster in the episodes. He is faster to connect to the machines than some of the other pilots who have taken longer to make this physical and mental connection. So, and we
for whatever reason, it's always younger kids. It's always like these teenage aged people who develop these fast connections with these machines.
Yeah, they need these young kids, and we learn that it may have something to do with Shinji's father, who is the creator of these machines, and we also learn about some of the evil economics that are going on behind the scenes that fund these machines. We see Shinji develop relationships with fellow teens that are around and the other pilots. And yeah, that's sort of what we've seen over the last, like Tom was saying, the first 7 episodes. You're kind of getting a sense of the world and these machines and these creatures. And each episode is kind of centered around fighting off a new creature that's come to fight in a sort of citywide, Godzilla-esque, battle between robot and creature with different obstacles each time. And yeah, like you were saying, because they are physically tied to the machines. I didn't mean to imply that the violence had no consequences. I just meant like it is still a kind of monster of the week action driven show.
No. I understand.
So that's all I meant by when I was saying that earlier. But yeah, the action is, because it's not just like the machine gets hit and that's it. They don't feel any pain. That means the kid's going to feel some pain inside this machine. So
yeah, the kids feel a lot of pain. Actually, they go through the show spends a lot of time really dealing with the the sacrifice beforehand of agreeing to put their body on the line for something like this, and the after effect of it, and how it really affects Shinju, and how it really affects Rei, who's the I guess the girl who was initially fused to the first Eva machine. And one thing about the plot that, Phil, I don't think you mentioned, and the show doesn't really mention it, at least not right away. They kind of just slide this backstory in there, but it's super, super important to the show, is when they're talking about these angel monster aliens, whatever they are, they have a theory about what happened. This is what we're seeing in the show is the second wave of it, right? So the show, which came out in the mid-90s, the actual plot takes place in 2015, and it's 15 years after this first attack by these angel beings. And they've basically created a catastrophic global warming type event where the Antarctica melted, a bunch of tsunamis and hurricanes wiped out. I think they say in the show like 2 billion people died. And then it also led to a second nuclear war, and more bombs were dropped. And then from that destruction, with half of the world basically wiped out, the remaining members of the human race were somehow able to band together and not only create these massive like kaiju robots to fight the angels if they ever come back, which they finally do 15 years later in the present day when the show takes place.
Yeah, they canceled the apocalypse.
They've canceled the apocalypse, but they've also they've been able to build these cities. Like there's a city called Tokyo 3, which is able to hide under the Earth's surface.
Yeah, the skyscrapers like rise up from the ground.
Yeah, skyscrapers kind of rise and descend underground to protect themselves from, a sudden unannounced angel attack and stuff like that. So it's a whole world that's dealing with this, like the aftermath of a trauma, of just a world-wrecking event. And it kind of made it really interesting to watch it right now as we're in the middle of a pandemic, because obviously I think maybe it was unintentional, maybe not, but this is obviously a great show to watch and think about global warming and the possible outcome of what may happen if it's allowed to go unchecked, and also what the human response might be. And that's why the show, what I said earlier before I even recognized the director connection, why it reminded me a lot of Shin Godzilla. Because did you ever see that, Phil?
No, I haven't seen that one. It's been recommended to me. I've seen all the other new ones. Yeah, I've seen the other newer ones. That was the one I missed, and probably the one, yeah, like you said, I would probably like the most.
Yeah, because Shin Godzilla is all about, it's basically another resetting of Godzilla, but instead the focus of that movie is all about the political response, specifically Japan, but also how it coordinates with other countries. So it's a lot of members of the military and members of the government in control rooms figuring out how to deal with the threat. So it's interesting in that way, and that's what this show is about a lot. But yeah, so since there's this backdrop of just complete massive loss everywhere, every character is kind of tainted by that, especially the main characters that we follow. Shinju, the main boy, Rei, who's probably my favorite character. You mentioned that Shinju has a couple of schoolmate buddies that he befriends, but before he's able to befriend them, one of them just beats the shit out of him because Shinju is controlling one of the Eva machines, and that school kid's sister got massively hurt in the wreckage. So it's dealing with, instead of just being a silly, Angel versus Eva battle where windows are blowing up left and right on buildings, they focus the plot of the next episode on, yeah, you were in that machine thinking you were saving our city, but my sister is still like unconscious in hospital because of what you did. So it's a lot of dealing with stuff like that in a really interesting way.
So did you like it?
I did. I'm a big fan. I'm super interested. I know it's kind of weird because this is a show that's been recommended to me for 15 years. So finally sitting down to watch it, I'm excited to watch it. And I know that there's something about the end of this show, like it's one of those shows that I've been told over and over again, like just wait till you finish it. So I know there's something supposedly something big and mind-blowing is going to happen eventually. So I'm giving it a lot of rope, maybe more than I would other pieces of entertainment, because I just trust all the people who have recommended it to me. Like, so many people have recommended to me this show, and over so many years, that I'm putting all of my trust in those recommendations. But that's not to say that I'm not enjoying it on its own merits right now. I think I was starting to read this essay before we recorded, and I didn't finish it, but I will before our next recording, so we can talk about it when we do our little neon segment. But the writer of this essay, which is a series of essays on Mubi.com, MUBI, was talking about how the creator of this show was basically trying to fuse his love of kaiju stories and like an apocalyptic scenario involving giant monsters and his own battle with chronic depression. And that kind of dictated a lot of the visual language. And I think, to me, so far, at least through these first half dozen episodes, some of the most striking imagery of of the show is it gets really kind of like dark in these sudden flashes of like unbridled rage. Like, there are moments where Shinju, who's this really meek young boy who isn't like your standard hero who raises his hand and says, "I'll take care of it, like, let me be your hero," he tries to run away. Like, there's literally one scene in one early episode that's a several minute sequence of they've just lost track of him, and he's just riding a train station all the way to one end of Japan, not knowing what to do, just knowing that he's scared and doesn't want to be involved. And he pretty much reaches the end of the line and realizes that he has nowhere to go. He has no family besides this horrible dad who is purely using him for his abilities to control this giant machine. And the dad even says as much to him, like, I don't love you, you're just needed here. And he reaches the end of this train line and is like, I guess I gotta go back because I got nowhere else to go. It's really sad, and there are really sad moments like that. And then when he's in this machine and he's fused to this like massively powerful human creation, he lets out these like really bursts of like yells of anger, and the screen gets super red, and then suddenly the action gets very violent and people are scared of him. And it's these weird emotional like high wire acts that the show's doing, which is what's really drawing me to the show. Like the example of that character dealing with his cowardice and like rage that's kind of bubbling to the surface, that you can tell this kid has been trying to keep down below the surface. And then the other main pilot of these machines, this girl Ray, who's basically, she seems dead inside. Like, she is just a lifeless husk of a human being. She just does what she's told. She has no emotions whatsoever until recently, the last episode I watched. You realize she has this extreme loyalty to Shinju's father, basically the architect of this this operation with these giant machines, because he saved her life when a test in the machine was going wrong. She was about to be burned alive, and he basically singed his hands to open up a padlocked door and save her. And ever since then, she has just become completely loyal to him, and you get the sense that she is literally alone. I mean, at least Shinju has been able to make two friends in class. She sits in the corner of the classroom completely by herself. She never talks to anybody. All she has is this guy who hopefully cares for her in an appropriate way. We don't know yet. But beyond that, she has nothing in this world. And it seems like they're finally starting to develop a relationship. So that angle of focusing on the depressive sides of characters who should be our heroes, and hopefully taking the long route to like earning a relationship and a friendship between them, is something that I'm really looking forward to.
Cool. Well, I mean, yeah, I like you. I guess I'm pretty... I guess, like, because of its reputation, I'm giving it some rope, like you said, and I did read in a lot of... I'm not reading about what happens in the show, but I did read that in the process of making the show that around episode 16 or so is where it really splits from the original source material, and that's when apparently he started getting extremely strange and kind of really going on into a new weirder direction. So I think there is a part of me that's like, all right, well, let's hang on till then, and maybe then, not that I don't find it good so far, but so far I'm not like, oh, this is transcendent, this is clearly the best anime ever made, because obviously, one, I haven't seen them all, and two, it's all largely set up. I do find the show pretty easy to watch in terms of it's serialized, so the way it's doing most episodes is a to be continued, where obviously there's like a big moment of the attack or a big dramatic moment that's about to happen, and then that's the to be continued. And then with Netflix set up the way it is, it's just like, hey, in 10 seconds the next episode's starting, so it just dives right into the next one, and they kind of it's highly serialized, so you do just watch it in order. It's basically like one long movie for the most part, but
Netflix has to slow their roll on that.
Yeah,
that like transition between episodes. They give you 3 seconds to hit pause or decide to watch the end credits. Like sometimes I want to take a minute,
Yeah, they don't give you that minute.
It's disrespectful to the credits as well. They gotta chill on that. It's too extreme. Like you can make it a 15-second countdown or something. Netflix, come on.
I wouldn't be surprised if in future like Writers Guild or Directors Guild or whatever guild strike that happens, that they're like, hey, those credits need to be seen. They're not there just to like, they're contractually put there because they have to be. But if you're just like so easily able to disregard them and never witness them, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, no, they need to not be cut off as soon as they start or something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Netflix did some lifeless study where they realized if we force the next episode of something on somebody or another movie, if it starts before they can reach their remote control, they're 8% more likely to just continue watching or some bullshit.
Yeah. Well, so as for this, to be honest, like you said, this was not on my radar before you mentioned it. I had heard of it. That's about it. I am not a giant anime guy, not because I don't like it, but just because it was just not one of the aspects that intrigued me, which is, I guess, sort of weird, only because I like samurai movies so much, and I like, kung fu as much as I love, Ozu or whatever. Like I love that. I love stuff that has come out of the Japanese culture, and I, love so much of all of it. So it's just one of those things that was kind of a blind spot. So I'm interested to keep watching it. I suppose I still have, maybe it's just the ripple effects of the influences, because the whole time I'm watching it, I was remembering Robot Jocks. I don't know if you ever watched that one as a kid, but yeah, then there was like Voltron and Power Rangers, and of course I was thinking about like, man, like you said, Guillermo del Toro really ripped this off, and I was having those thoughts, of course, about Pacific Rim, and yeah, so I'm intrigued by the show. I'm enjoying it. I definitely am curious to see what weirdness we have in store. I can see the seeds of it being, like you said, a psychologically driven, more serious kind of intellectual version. It's a little bit more than just fighting monsters. So yeah, let's keep going down the road.
Also, if anyone's, that's a big reason why I decided to suggest this title, because I'm probably maybe a slightly bigger, between manga and anime, I'm a slightly bigger fan than you, but I'm also not a big fan at all. And I thought it would be good to kind of dip our toes into something that neither of us are too familiar with. But I also want to say, if anyone's interested in following along, we're going to finish this show and watch the movie, which is also streaming on Netflix over the next few episodes. And it's right there. It's free to watch. We're all stuck at home. And also I don't know if you would agree, the pilot episode is really great. It like how I said, the backstory, they kind of just sneak in over the course of the first few episodes. It is not this big narrative setup with the voiceover saying 15 years ago the aliens or the angels came down. It just starts right off with an action sequence. You're just thrown into the shit right away. And the end of the first episode, which every episode is only 23 or 24 minutes long, the end of the pilot also ends on a great action cliffhanger too. So I think it's a great pilot to really get you in the mood of what you're about to see. And then from there, it just gets a little more complex, while also dealing with, it is a show from pre-2000, so it is much more X-Files in structure than say something like The Sopranos, where it's they have more Monster of the Week episodes, but that's okay. I like those episodes too.
Yeah. I don't know that I have it in me, honestly, to review all the movies separately on the show. Maybe we'll have to like wrap that. We're gonna wrap all that in with the like final episode or something, I believe. They're not, because there's two movies, right?
I think there's this show. There's one movie specifically that deals directly with the end of the show, and then I think there's a second movie that happened years later. That's kind of like a spin-off or something. But I mean, this episode is obviously a shorter release that we just wanted to focus on anime and Neon Genesis. In the coming weeks, we'll just kind of catch up and do little segments about where we're at in the show. And then when we finally finish this series and watch that end of Evangelion movie, we'll do a segment there and wrap it up. But yeah, it's not going to be 4 podcasts specifically focused on this show. No.
Yeah, I think since you're asking me to watch like a 14-hour thing, I should come up with like a stuffy British costume drama to make you watch after this or something.
Go for it, man. You throw some suggestions out there.
I said Gone with the Wind. You're like, I'm not watching Gone with the Wind.
I said not that week, but I had said Gone with the Wind at the beginning when we talked about blind spots. I'm down to do Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, it's not that long, right? It's a short movie.
Yeah, it's 3 hours and 50 minutes or something. Is it? It's not 4 hours, but it's close.
Yeah, I've not seen it. I don't know. It's somewhere around there.
Yeah. So what else have you done pop culture wise this week? Anything fun?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to, I can recommend some stuff. Do you want to just call it an end to the Neon Genesis of the week and head into some wrap ups and recommendations?
I'll say. One last question. Are you watching it Japanese audio English subs, or are you doing the dubbed version?
Subtitled.
Me too. I started both. I started it with the original Japanese audio track, and then halfway through the pilot, I switched over to the English dub just to see if I preferred it. And I always enjoy, with anime in particular, I always enjoy watching a few minutes of the English dub with the English subtitles on to see how different they are.
Yeah.
Because it's honestly, you will be shocked how much they change from what you're reading on the subtitles versus what you hear.
They can't do literal word-for-word translations because like of the complexity of the languages and structure changes of sentences and us not having certain words. So they kind of have to like, it's like the Bible, it depends on who's adapting it that day.
Yeah, I just think, I don't even think it's that they can't do it. I just think when you dub something, I think the dubbers are given more freedom to kind of play and make it sound natural coming out of their mouths, which is obviously when you're reading something, it can be a little more strict with the language because you don't have to hear it. And it's a little more forgiving versus when you hear something and if something doesn't sound natural, it really just doesn't sound natural and there's nothing you can do to fix it. But it was an interesting thing. But yeah, ultimately, I am listening to the Japanese as well. But I think if you want to watch it with the English dub for anime, I think that's okay. So I would recommend people give it a shot, especially if you've never really watched an anime before. Give it a try. What else you got to do? That's all I'll say.
Cool. All right. Well, in terms of like wrap up and recommendations, I've been doing my usual, just watching a lot, reading a lot. Because my project deals with a certain thing, I've been watching a lot of Spike Lee movies and catching up with some other blind spots, like
a certain thing. You say,
yes,
it deals with a certain thing. Interesting.
Yeah. So I watched Jungle Fever. I watched Clockers last night.
Jungle Fever. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna watch probably Bamboozled later.
Bamboozled.
I watched Cane River this week.
What is Cane River? I don't know that one.
It is a 1982 black romance about a black couple in this place called Cane River in the South. It's about this poet who wants to. It's like a Romeo and Juliet-esque. Like they don't like his last name because his family comes from slave owners and stuff, even though he's black. And it's this whole thing. It's this really indie 1982 lo-fi, low-budget movie that just got restored. It's on Criterion, and it's a really interesting slice of life. It's pretty, there's some stiff acting, and it's low budget and has some pretty funny song choices, but it was pretty fascinating. And so, yeah, I've been watching stuff like that.
You know what you should watch? I'm sure you've seen it already, but Brother from Another Planet, the John.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's not on my list to revisit, but maybe I should add it on there. I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that since like NIFA year, somewhere around there. And but in terms of new movies to watch, I would on Hulu. There's a movie called Spaceship Earth, which is basically the like true story of the people that created Biodome. It's like a real life Biodome from the Pauly Shore movie, except I didn't realize that it actually happened in real life in like the early 90s.
Yeah.
And so the doc follows this biosphere that's created in the Arizona desert, which is created by this crazy group of scientists who have the intent of like, if we ever make it to Mars, we're going to need to be able to make a sustainable in-house, livable system. So they're trying to do that here on Earth, and they set about trying to do that, and the doc follows them through the process. And obviously things go awry because we don't have a bunch of space pods right now, and it's an interesting look. It's a pretty standard talking heads, like with historical footage playing behind them type documentary, but it was an interesting true story. But that's on Hulu, easily accessible. I would recommend that. I would also highly, 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 highly recommend. It's maybe my number one movie of the year right now. It's called Driveways. It is a very, very small movie. You can rent it on video on demand, and it is like 83 minutes long or something. Let me pull it up. It's 83 minutes long. It's got Hong Chow in it of Downsizing and Inherent Vice fame, and Brian Dennehy, and it was one of the last movies Brian Dennehy filmed before passing away last month, and he plays the neighbor. Hong Chow and her young son go to empty out Hong Chow's now deceased sister's house, and she finds out that her sister has kind of been a hoarder. And she didn't realize that about her, and it becomes about this couple weeks that this mother has to go about unloading her dead sister's house and selling off her remains and taking care of that property. And meanwhile, her lonely son befriends the old man next door, played by Brian Dennehy. And I think just based on the description, it sounds like a pretty standard, precious, like indie movie that you've probably seen 100 times. Yeah, I know it does, and I think that's probably all I expected from it, but then when you watch the movie, it's just like, Jesus, it's like an Ozu or something. It's like somebody with just such a perfect, delicate handle on emotion and tenderness. And Brian Dennehy, especially the fact that he just died, I think really adds to the performance in a unique way. It's about an old man who's facing the end of his life and being alone. And it's just so sad and touching. And it's the absolute best version of that kind of movie. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Like I said, I cried for like 40 minutes of those 83 minutes. It's just so sweet and good. And it's not a sad movie so much as it's just like wise and kind of somber. But it's also got plenty to laugh at, plenty of great stuff. It's a great performance from Brian Dennehy. I can't recommend it enough. Like I said, I know it sounds probably like, indie crap to you, but I think would probably really, really, really like it if you give it a chance.
Well, I'm sure I would, especially because you just mentioned that there's some stuff to laugh at too. I think the biggest trap those types of movies fall into is they take themselves way too seriously, and they kind of forget that life is always on some level kind of absurd or funny. It's just all about perspective. So if your perspective is right, if you have the right head on your shoulders as the creative force behind it, you can make any story watchable and fascinating. But speaking of that, who do we know is the director or the writer? Is anybody that we would know?
His name's Andrew Ahn. He made this movie called Spa Night, which I have not seen, but he's just his second film. So okay. It's a very
Spa Night
movie.
Sounds familiar, but I've definitely never seen it.
Yeah, just to give an example of like where the movie kind of zagged where a different movie wouldn't have is Brian Dennehy is playing a Korean War veteran, and you know that right away because he's sitting on his front porch with a Korean vet hat on.
Okay.
And Hong Chow and her son are clearly an Asian family who are going to be spending a lot of time next door. And I think I kind of instantly was like, oh fuck, is this going to be a Gran Torino thing? You know, or I didn't really know what I was in for. But I don't think the fact that they're Asian comes up once. Like, I don't think he mentions it once in the movie. You know, like
Yeah.
those small touches that I was just like, oh, thank you for not making that a thing. You know, that's not at all like, it's just there as a detail, and it kind of, you know, like informs that character a little bit, gives you a sense of his history, but also like it's not just going to play that like, oh, he's still holding grudges from back then type thing. So
Yeah.
you know, the movie kind of surprised me constantly, and it knows how to pull emotion from you. So I'm definitely going to be mentioning it as we get further along into the year. I have a, you know,
that's good because I gotta start doing. I gotta start watching some new movies, man. I don't even
Yeah,
know if I have 10.
I
year.
counted for you last night. You have watched 10 movies from this year.
I've watched. Okay, so I have a top 10.
You have a top 10. It includes Fantasy Island. It includes.
Oh, I love Fantasy Island.
What was the one? I already forgot it. It like came out in January, like with fucking what's her name?
Oh, the Tiffany Haddish movie.
Yeah.
That is the worst. That I don't care how many more I see. That is the worst movie of 2020. Like a Boss.
Like a Boss. That was when I was like, he saw Like a Boss. That's one. It's going to be in his top 10.
that was before the Rona hit. I thought I could see whatever I wanted to. Oh God, that movie was so terrible, so unfunny. Man, she needed. Maybe she'll use this time off to reconsider her career path because Tiffany Haddish is so funny, she's so talented, and she has been picking garbage, and she is overdoing it. Man, she's burning herself out on people, I think.
I mean, but like you have like Kevin Hart. He appears in 10 movies a year, and like 8 of them are bombs that no one I feel like sees. But I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. But I guess I feel the same way about Kevin Hart too. But maybe it's not affecting him. So I guess I'm full of shit. But I don't know. I love Tiffany Haddish. She really makes me laugh. But she's been in like 6 straight movies that I've seen, and I think are just absolutely terrible. So I don't know.
Yeah. This year you have seen Bad Boys 2. Or I'm sorry, but you've seen Bad Boys for Life, Birds of Prey, Gretel and Hansel, Sonic the Hedgehog, Invisible Man, Fantasy Island, and The Way Back and Elephant. That's your list for the year.
That's only 8.
Maybe I didn't scroll back far. Oh, I forgot about Like a Boss and Underwater.
Oh yeah, we saw Underwater together, right? So my number one is definitely Invisible Man from that very meager list. Elephant's good. If people have the Disney Channel app, you can stream Elephant for free.
Did you see the big news? We didn't talk about that at all, about the Disney app next month, July 3rd.
Oh, Hamilton, right?
Hamilton's coming. That's going to be that's going to crash the fucking app.
This is fascinating to me. If we had more time, I have a heart out. Speaking of movies, I am going to the drive-in movie theater in an hour.
Awesome. What are you seeing?
Seeing Bloodshot.
It's
a 2020 movie.
I've seen it.
I will move Like a Boss off my list. I guarantee it.
I've seen Bloodshot. I can talk to you about Bloodshot.
Did you like it at all or no?
I will say it surprised me, and I don't want to spoil it. I would just say the first half of the movie is suspiciously dumb, and you will find it's smart about it. It knows it's dumb.
Okay.
So if you're watching the first like 20 minutes, like, oh, this is garbage, just like hold in there. It surprised me. It went somewhere. It knows why it's being dumb.
Phil, honestly, I'm just so excited that I'm actually going to be seeing something not in my house.
Nah, well,
I'm going to go sit outside in a car and watch a movie on a screen that is not mine. I'm so excited. I have a plan.
Good. Go do it.
I have a plan. But yes, Hamilton, they filmed three different performances of Hamilton back in 2016 when the original cast, including Lin-Manuel, was still there. They have cut it together into one big, nice professional-looking performance. And initially, Disney had plans to release it theatrically in October of 2021. And they moved it up to a streaming premiere on the Disney app July 2020. It will be out in less than 2 months. That is a massive news story. I mean, not only because it's arguably the most successful musical in Broadway history, coming to an app, so millions of people who never got to see it before will finally be able to. But especially, and many more who have seen it on Broadway like me will finally get to see the whole thing with the original cast. Like, by the time I got to see it on Broadway, Lynn was gone.
Yeah. I've not seen it, so Disney's gonna have like the full version, then like a sing-along version with all the lyrics and shit.
Yes.
They're gonna like have different versions.
But it also says so much about what companies are needing to do right now. Like this definitely was not something Disney wanted to do. They're not excited about this move. This is a desperation move.
Well, desperation / they see an opportunity. Like, look, everyone is at home. And they're going to be home, and we need content that is going to drive people to our app and compete, especially with stuff like, because Peacock and HBO Max are coming out, HBO Max specifically. So I think this is going to be just another targeted way for them to like cancel out subscriptions to that and drive subscriptions towards them, because people are going to be like, oh, Hamilton's on whatever, like, and maybe they're hoping that overrides the like news that, oh, hey, Friends is available again over at HBO Max.
Yeah, but also I think they're looking at it from the long view as well, because I think places are starting to realize coronavirus is not going away in 2 months.
Yeah.
This is
but
here,
I think
this
it's
is here for
different.
a year. And
yeah,
that means a lot of the stuff that they had on deck to shoot, they're not going to be able to shoot. And I think that's a big reason why this is coming out now, because I think they're looking in the long view and saying, shit, what do we have for December and January now? We got to just front load this and pray and pray and pray and pray that the restrictions will ease and we can start shooting shit eventually, because we have nothing coming out in 6 months. So we got to keep people busy until then. Well,
that, and it's also a matter of they're clearing their schedule to put a new Disney property in there. Maybe they'll put I can't believe Scarlet Witch. Maybe they'll put Scarlet Witch there, in that October slate that they already have, now that they have that empty, because they're probably looking at it like, hey, this is something that it's already paid for, it's already shot, it's already complete. Like, we can use it as a business strategy now and compare that to what the millions more we might have made. They're substituting the millions they would have made in a theatrical release to hopefully use that to instead drive people to their app, which is more important right now in the age of coronavirus. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely speaking to all of those things, and we'll just keep following it, buddy. But it's 6:00, so I think that's the show for this week.
Time to go, baby. I'm off to the drive-thru. I will report back. Next week is all about Bloodshot.
Okay. We'll talk about it. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the show. Every one of those helps us out incredibly. Thank you, Zach Pitts, for the theme music. Please don't check out our Facebook page. I'm not doing that. Leave us some comments wherever you find us. Let us know what you think. Check us out on YouTube as well. Tom, tell us where to find you.
Bendy Tom Bendy, Instagram. Big Fat Bond, Twitter.
Nice. And I am Phil_Wiedenhaft at Twitter. I will not tweet much, but I will read your tweets. Hopefully I will talk to you later. Tom, I'll see you next week. Have fun at that drive-thru, buddy.
Thank you, dude. Love you, everybody. Watch Neon Genesis. It's worth watching.
Adios.
Bye.